Hello, I'm Elif and this is a recap for episode 101 of the series For My Family, 24 hours after Turkey and before dubbed for TV. Berk asks Ibiku with disbelief if the things she read are true. Ibiku confirms, visibly distressed. Berk reviews everything and quickly heads towards the house. When Isla sees Berk's distraught face, she understands that Berk knows everything. Isla explains everything to Berk and reveals that her mother's death was accidental. Berk cries out, saying, "You ruined my life. I couldn't see my mother." At that moment, Elif enters and, seeing that Isla and Berk haven't left, inquires about what happened. Berk suddenly embraces her, crying, and then leaves without saying a word. Berk and Ibiku walk along the shore, and Berk confides in Ibiku. She asks, "Why did my real parents abandon me? Was I a naughty child? Or ugly? Who abandons their child?" Ibiku asks, "Are you sure you want to know the truth?" Berk nods, and Ibiku reveals, they were very poor. They gave you to Mrs. Isla in exchange for money. Berk cries, saying, "Tell me that I thought I had a good life. Don't tell me I was in the middle of a nightmare." Susan recounts the incident with Lydia to her mother, who scolds her. Susan asks, "What would you have done if you were in my place?" Soraya replies, "I would have given her a bribe. This way, I would let her know I was aware of her plan but wouldn't give it much importance." That night, Berk goes to Tolga's house and stays there. At night, when Akif returns home, Nabahat angrily tells him that she will divorce him and refuses to let him into the room, asking him to sleep on the couch. Akif explains that he found the headscarf in Ankara, and it wasn't Soraya's. However, Nabahat doesn't believe him. The next day at school, Susan, using the method she learned from her mother, apologizes to Lydia. Omar kisses Susan and says, "That's my girl. Well done." Şengül, upon hearing from Ibiku that Berk knows everything, becomes worried about Isla. She goes to see Isla, who is not feeling well. Isla tells Şengül that she would die if she loses Berk. Şengül tries to reassure her, saying that Berk will surely come back. Lydia, with Sarp's advice, approaches Elif and asks her to tell everyone that Susan was responsible for ruining her class assignment. Elif agrees in exchange for a laptop. Soraya visits Nabahat and explains that the argument was just a misunderstanding. She describes, "When you mentioned the headscarf, I wanted to exaggerate and made up that it was a personal design. You surely understand, all women do these kinds of things. That headscarf had nothing to do with Akif. Due to unpaid bills, the electricity and water in Şengül's house are cut off. To resolve this, she asks Helmia to fake an illness so they can release a video of her and collect money through her. However, their plan fails, and they don't get any money. At school, Elif argues with a student, and Berk steps in and confronts the boy upon seeing Elif. Elif, surprised, tells Berk to mind his own business. To make sure Soraya was telling the truth, Nabahat goes out with Susan and finds a headscarf similar to Soraya's in a store, reassuring herself. She goes to the club, apologizes to Akif, and tells him that Soraya came to see her and spilled everything. Akif is baffled by Soraya's games. When he sees Soraya, he asks her what her goal is, and Soraya mischievously denies everything. Akif questions, "Are you flirting with me? Do you like me too?" Soraya denies it playfully. At school, Elif talks to her mother, and Berk, with tears in his eyes, asks her, "What was your mother like?" Elif describes her mother, and Berk sheds tears as Elif reminisces. At night, Akif is at the club with his friends, making a lot of noise, and many customers are annoyed, leading them to leave. When they ignore Yaman's warning, he asks his friends to leave in Akif's absence. When Akif returns and sees his friends gone, he becomes furious and argues with Yaman. Yaman tells him, "You're the smaller partner. Whatever I say goes." Akif becomes extremely angry and attacks Yaman, and they get into a fight. Mahi, Tolga, and Yasmin go to the cinema, but before entering the hall, Tolga tells them that his uncle called, and he has to go to the club. He leaves Mahi and Yasmin alone and goes away upset. The next day in class, when the teacher examines the students' handicrafts made from unused items, it's Lydia and Sarp's turn. They wait to execute their plan, but Emel's work is fine. Elif has suggested their plan to Susan, and Susan has drawn a plan. When it's Susan and Sarp's turn for handicraft, everyone sees that their handicraft is broken. Susan intentionally ruins her handicraft so that Sarp, her teammate, doesn't get a good grade. When Susan is alone with Sarp and Lydia, she tells them that she knows about their plan and forces them to apologize to Elif. Şengül and Helmia have decided to use email in their videos to attract people's attention. However, a problem arises for Şengül, and she has to go and make email do various tasks to show she is very poor and pitiable, gaining people's sympathy. She asks email to sell tissues behind the red light, and a woman objects. An hour later, when Şengül arrives and sees email selling tissues, Helmia shouts at her, and she scolds her. At that moment, social services officers arrive and inform them that they have been reported for employing a child. Soraya separately asks Yaman and Akif to have dinner with her. Both men are delighted and prepare eagerly for the evening, unaware that Soraya has also invited Nabahat. When Nabahat learns that Akif is coming and is unaware of her presence, she angrily confronts Soraya. "How dare you invite my husband to dinner alone? Akif cannot come." She gets up to leave just as Akif arrives with a bouquet of flowers. In the evening, Berk goes home to collect his belongings. Ayla tearfully pleads with Berk not to leave her alone. Berk retorts, "Do you realize what you did to my life? I had nothing. You took my mother away from me and brought her as a maid into your house. I did you a favor by not reporting you to the police." Ayla responds, "Let me go to the police. If I'm not going to see you, I'm not afraid of prison." Berk takes Ayla to the police station. Ayla grabs Berk's hand and says, "Take care of yourself, my son. You are the most precious thing to me. I love you so much. I hope you forgive me." Berk cries in silence as Ayla walks away, heading towards the police station. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode.